ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
The cold air of a bustling December morning swirled through the streets of downtown Minneapolis, carrying with it the anticipation and excitement typical of Christmas Eve. Families, wrapped tightly in their winter attire, lined the sidewalks, eagerly awaiting the start of the city's annual Christmas parade, a highlight of the holiday season. Among them was Myron Larrabee, a beleaguered postal worker, whose weary eyes and slumped shoulders betrayed a year's worth of fatigue and disappointment. Today, however, held a spark of hope, a final chance to redeem a year's worth of missed opportunities with his son. As the crowd's excitement built, Myron's mind raced with a singular, consuming focus to secure a Turbo Man action figure, the season's hottest toy. It wasn't just any toy for Myron. It was a symbol, a token he believed essential to winning his son's approval and proving himself as a father. His desperation was fueled not just by the commercial frenzy that had overtaken the city, but by the weight of his personal failures, missed birthdays, postponed outings, and unkept promises that had accumulated like unpaid bills. Earlier that morning, Myron had tried once again to procure the toy, visiting a series of local toy stores only to face the same frustrating outcome: sold out. Each rejection added layers to his growing desperation, turning his day into a simmering cauldron of last hopes. Meanwhile, not far from where Myron stewed in his brewing desperation, another father, Howard Langston, faced his own holiday crisis. Howard, a high-powered mattress salesman, had also promised his son a Turbo Man doll. Unlike Myron, Howard's approach was marked by a confident assurance that bordered on naivety, a stark contrast to Myron's frantic anxiety. As the parade was about to begin, Myron found himself drawn towards the staging area, his instincts as a desperate hunter guiding him. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the area, catching glimpses of colorful floats and costumed characters, preparing for their cue to enter the main street. It was here, amidst the chaos of last-minute preparations and distracted staff, that fate would pivot Myron's day in an unexpected direction. Through the crowd, Myron spotted a harassed parade organizer shouting into her walkie-talkie, clearly agitated by some mishap. Edging closer, he overheard her problem. The actor scheduled to play Turbo Man had not shown up, and the float was about to roll out. Seizing what he saw as a providential opportunity, Myron's mind raced with audacity. What if he could step into the role? What if this twist of fate was his chance to not just secure a Turbo Man, but to become Turbo Man, the hero of the day for his son? With a mixture of boldness and sheer desperation, Myron approached the frantic organizer, feigning calm and assurance. "I heard you need a Turbo Man," he said, his voice steady but his heart pounding. "I'm your guy." The organizer, too stressed to question this unexpected savior, quickly sized him up. Myron's build was close enough to fit the costume, and with no time to verify his credentials, she hurriedly nodded. Yes, come with me." Myron was whisked away to a changing area, where he was rapidly suited up in the Turbo Man costume, a red and gold ensemble that felt both ridiculous and exhilarating. As the suit was secured and the helmet placed over his head, Myron looked at his reflection, barely recognizing the figure staring back. In that moment, enveloped in the garish superhero outfit, Myron felt a surge of exhilaration. He was no longer just a failed father or a tired postal worker. He was Turbo Man, the savior of Christmas. As the float took its position in the parade lineup, Myron took deep, steadying breaths, trying to calm the flutter of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm him. He knew the real challenge was yet to come. Ahead of him lay the parade route lined with eager children and hopeful parents, all unaware of the turmoil churning inside the man behind the mask. As the parade kicked off, the float carrying Myron rolled into view of the cheering crowds. Lights flashed, music blared, and Myron, standing tall, waved mechanically as the float navigated the parade route. With each cheer from the crowd, his confidence grew, but so did his fear. How long could he keep up this charade? What would happen when the parade ended? Unknown to Myron, at the edge of the crowd, Howard Langston watched, unaware that the man waving from the Turbo Man float was his desperate rival, not a hired actor. Howard's focus was singular: to find a way to get that doll and fulfill his promise to his son, Jamie. The parade moved forward, a moving tapestry of holiday spirit and joyous celebration, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding within Myron Larrabee's costumed guise. As the float turned down the main boulevard, Myron's thoughts drifted to his son, hoping that somehow this grand gesture would make everything right. As the parade progressed, the excitement built to a fever pitch with families lined up along the route, eagerly awaiting the appearance of Turbo Man. Myron, decked out in the Turbo Man suit, soaked up the adulation from the crowd. Each cheer bolstered his resolve to maintain his ruse, believing that this act of deception was a small price to pay for the joy he could bring to his son, and perhaps redeem himself in his eyes. Meanwhile, Howard Langston, filled with determination and desperation, continued his quest through the crowd to secure the special edition Turbo Man doll for his son Jamie. His heart raced as he spotted Turbo Man on the float ahead, unaware that beneath the mask was Myron, his nemesis, in this frantic holiday battle. Howard managed to maneuver his way through the throng of parade goers until he was directly behind the float. He spotted an opportunity to climb aboard as the float briefly slowed at an intersection. With a quick glance to ensure no one was watching, Howard made his move, pulling himself up onto the float. His only focus was the Turbo Man doll, his son's ultimate Christmas wish. As Howard stealthily crept closer to Turbo Man, Myron turned and caught a glimpse of him. The recognition was instant, and a flash of panic crossed Myron's face, quickly replaced by anger. The parade, the crowd, and the cheering all faded into the background as Myron faced Howard, his facade as Turbo Man slipping. "What are you doing here, Langston?" Myron hissed, his voice barely contained within the helmet. Howard, undeterred, responded with equal intensity. "I'm here for my son's Christmas present, Myron, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else stand in my way." Tension crackled between the two desperate fathers as they stood face to face on the moving float. The fight that ensued was not part of the planned parade spectacle, but a genuine clash of wills. Myron, fearing that his identity would be revealed and his chance at redemption lost, lashed out in desperation. Howard, driven by his promise to Jamie, fought back fiercely. The scuffle escalated quickly, with both men grappling for the upper hand. As the float turned a corner, the motion added to the instability of their footing. In a critical moment, Myron managed to shove Howard forcefully. Howard's foot caught on part of the float's elaborate decoration, and he stumbled backwards off balance. With a look of horror on his face, Howard fell from the float, his head striking the hard edge of the curb with a sickening crack. The sound was drowned out by the music and cheers, but the impact was devastatingly clear. Howard lay motionless, blood beginning to pool around his head, as concerned bystanders screamed for help. Jamie, who had been watching the parade with growing excitement, saw his father fall. His joy turned to terror as he pushed through the crowd, racing to Howard's side. "Dad," he cried, his voice choked with tears. Paramedics were called, and the parade atmosphere turned somber as the reality of the situation sank in. Myron, still atop the float and dressed as Turbo Man, watched the scene unfold below with a mixture of shock and regret. The costume that had given him a brief feeling of heroism now felt like a shroud of guilt. As the emergency services tended to Howard, Myron's moment of triumph crumbled into chaos. The parade continued around them, but for Myron, Howard, and Jamie, the festive music now sounded like a distant echo, irrelevant to the tragedy that had just occurred. As the parade continued amidst the emerging chaos, Myron, still atop the Turbo Man float and draped in the costume of a hero, felt his world spinning out of control. The cheers of the crowd, once a source of exhilaration, now echoed in his ears like mocking laughter. His gaze drifted down to the Turbo Man doll in his hands, the symbol of his son's Christmas wish and the catalyst for his desperate actions. In a moment of complete breakdown, fueled by the sight of Howard's motionless body and the shock of his own actions, Myron began to destroy the Turbo Man doll. He ripped it apart with a ferocity that startled the onlookers, pieces of the once cherished toy scattering across the float. His actions escalated as he tore at the decorations, ripping the garish trimmings and scattering them into the crowd. The spectacle of the holiday hero transformed into a scene of devastation. The crowd's mood shifted from festive joy to horror as they witnessed Myron's meltdown. Parents shielded their children's eyes, but Jamie, Howard's son, watched in stunned disbelief, unable to tear his gaze away from the unraveling scene. Fueled by a mix of rage and despair, Myron spotted Jamie in the crowd. In a misguided attempt to rectify one wrong with another, he jumped down from the float and grabbed Jamie, pulling him up as a shield against the encroaching bystanders and the imminent police intervention. Myron put the boy down, shouted a police officer through a megaphone. As the area quickly became encircled by law enforcement, the festive parade had now turned into a standoff, with Myron holding Jamie close, his face a mask of confusion and fear. "I can't go back, not without making this right," Myron yelled back, his voice cracking under the strain. He clutched Jamie tighter, the boy trembling in his grip. The onlookers watched in silent dread, their holiday spirit overshadowed by the unfolding drama. From a nearby rooftop, a police sniper was in position, his focus trained on Myron. The officer's voice came over the radio, calm and measured. "Permission to take the shot, over." "Negative. Wait for my command," responded the SWAT team leader, his eyes locked on the scene below, hoping for a peaceful resolution. As the standoff continued, Myron's grip on Jamie slackened slightly, his resolve crumbling under the weight of his actions. His eyes filled with tears met Jamie's frightened gaze. In that moment, something shifted within Myron. The realization of the terror he was causing to an innocent child broke through his desperation. Before Myron could fully release Jamie, the sniper, misinterpreting a sudden movement, was given the clearance to shoot. A single shot rang out, striking Myron in the neck. He collapsed instantly, releasing Jamie as he fell. Blood filled the float. The crowd gasped as Jamie ran from the scene, unharmed but visibly shaken. Paramedics rushed to Myron, but it was too late. His misguided quest for redemption ended on that cold, hard pavement. Turbo Man was dead. Meanwhile, Howard, who had been rushed to the hospital, slowly regained consciousness. His head throbbed with pain, his thoughts a jumble of images and sounds from the parade. As clarity returned, his first frantic thought was for Jamie. Seeing his son safe, sitting beside his hospital bed with tears in his eyes but unharmed, Howard let out a sigh of relief mixed with pain. He reached out, pulling Jamie into a gentle embrace. "I'm here, son. You're safe," Howard whispered. The parade incident left a deep scar in the community, but for Howard and Jamie, the ordeal reinforced the irreplaceable value of family and the love that bound them together. Howard's smile, though pained, was genuine as he held his son, grateful for his safety and the second chance to be the father Jamie deserved.